Hey, I'm Justin.
This is Chaz.
Join us as we look back together, but learn to stay present.
Come with us as we rise up with hope on the horizon.
This is the podcast of extraordinary millennial gentlemen.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Justin. Chaz is with us.
Hello.
And we're back. Hello? Is someone there?
Yes.
Hello?
Welcome, people. Hello.
They're in the room.
They're in
Anyway.
the computer?
Oh, whoa. We are rapid fire already today. Wow, that's excellent.
Gotta
Today,
keep up.
we are taking it back. We're going to talk nostalgia, but kind of as it relates to maybe fatherhood, maybe a little bit how we were raised.
Yeah.
But on that subject of just looking back so we can learn for now and for the future. But before we get there, as always, you guys know, we like to talk about what we've been consuming this week.
Right.
Mr. Chaz, please, I'd love to know what has been on your go-to this week.
Man, so I'm into this new audiobook, which is it's in between like kind of a chore as well as kind of like super interesting all at the same time. It's like it's right on that
Is it very
edge for me.
data-driven? It's like factual.
It is very factual.
Gotcha.
It's about China, and I'm like wondering partially how they got this information, how they even wrote this. Like it's that kind of stuff where you're like, they were okay like opening up to you and saying this type of stuff or whatever.
So is that the interesting piece? You kind of get these nuggets of making
and
you
then
question.
the other part of it is just historical facts, like this was this ruler up to this person, like this person was in head of it, and how the like Chinese army is its own entity, kind of separate from the political like Chinese party in the background, and how they kind of run the government show, and like all these things about how they'll take this military block my face. Anyway, I don't want to get into too many details, but it was recommended. Very interesting stuff about how there's this party behind everything we see in the movement, all the government politics, even into military, and just the different reigns of the various presidents, things like that.
Is this like an era, or is it a comprehensive?
I think it's comprehensive. Well, it's not. It's more recent. So say like
last
the
century.
Past couple, 20, 30 years, from the 70s on, I would say.
Gotcha.
And really, so it's just kind of rapid fire. Yeah. Quick names. This is what they did. But then also how China's changed over time, and just a lot of the influences
Chinese
there, having.
Do you not want us to meet? We are just skimming the surface of this topic, this discussion. Okay, what are we consuming? This week? Last week I finished Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. What's it about? It's about someone getting murdered in cold blood and the trial afterwards. Written in the 50s. It was kind of a breakthrough book because it was like Law and Order before Law and Order. Or a show like that. It really was. It's like a true crime because it's based on actual events. It's just really well written, and the author, Truman Capote, I think is really well known because he created this style of like, he added some narration here and there, but everything in quotations was like based on an interview, based on a newspaper article, based on actual words from an actual person. And then I realized that book actually influences the book that I'm reading right now that I started last week since I finished In Cold Blood, which is In the Garden of Beasts by Erik Larson. You guys, if you've listened to a lot of our episodes, you probably know that I previously read a book also by Erik Larson, Seattle native, which was Devil in the White City, which is about Chicago. In the Garden of Beasts is about a newly assigned U.S. diplomat to Germany in 1933 while
Oh.
Hitler's Germany and the Nazis are kind of coming to power.
Very
So
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
but those books piggyback off one another. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
No, Eric Larson's book piggybacks off Capote. I think Capote was really the first one to do that with like factual.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But obviously the difference with Capote is I think he was very closely involved while the trial, let's say, was going on for the accused. Whereas Eric Larson looks back at least a century or so, 80 years after the fact,
Yeah.
where there's not really contemporaries to talk through, where Capote is talking to all the contemporaries. So anyway, if anybody out there is into kind of true crime podcasts, things like that, I highly recommend you take a look at Truman Capote's book. Probably you already have, and you're a big fan. Is it a fun subject matter? Absolutely not. But like I said, I'd say it's, a lot of these real crime dramas or real crime reality TV, it was that before that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty substantial book. Okay.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I have been cooking a lot last week.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have been cooking many meats. Many luscious, tender meats.
Out on the grill? Or in the stove? Pan. Oven.
In a dish. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of
rays.
I've been doing a lot of the heat of the sun. It's really easy. You turn it up, you turn it down. No, a lot of sous vide cooking.
Yeah.
And experimentation. And I will tell you today, I made a roast. Your mom makes the most amazing, like, roast beef, pot roast I've ever had in my entire life.
I'll have to tell her. Yeah.
Straight up, people. She does not mess around. So anyway, not saying it was that, but I did make a flat iron roast, very beefy. And it came out like prime rib, my dog. It was good. It was really good. So, but it's an experiment. I've never cooked this way before. Yeah. It's like, it's very different. You guys check out sous vide. It's kind of a fun, no mess way of cooking. All right. I'm talking a lot.
That's so good.
What are you consuming this week, good sir? What is on your go-to list?
Yeah, so I'm also into a book. This one's on China, and
China will prosper.
China will prosper. Yes, it is about that. It's about military. It's about their government. It's about the kind of higher up, like behind the political party leaders that
for most Americans,
the country.
I don't think anybody really knows about that.
No.
In America. Like, I don't. Yeah, you got, like, Xi, but what does that mean? Who is that person?
Who's behind the strings,
the planning.
The planning, the long-term, they have
strategy.
They have long-term strategy. Like, they're planning generations out to be the lead in economics, all these other things. And just one example that pops in my head. So they had to lighten up their army or, their military force.
Okay.
They don't call it the army, right? So they had to lighten it up, and they're when they talk lighten it up, they're dropping hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? Because they had like 5 million back in the 80s in their ranks. Yeah. And so they're like, they have to lighten it up. They have to change. They have to become more technological. They have to do this and that. So what they do is they retire them. They sent these out, and they're naming cities I've been to where they go. Yeah. They built the roads. They built the factories. They took the people that had the training, and they sent them out to build up these cities.
So straight from military, I'm guessing because we're talking about China, indoctrinating as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're loyal. You were part of the, I don't know. I'm interested in this, though, because as I look kind of geopolitically at other nations and look at history, they kind of had, they always had nuclear weapons, right? But I think in the last 20, 30 years, maybe 30 years ago, you kind of look at it and say, well, they would just overwhelm you with numbers because they have population.
Right.
But you're saying that is not the strategy anymore. That's not who
Oh,
they
no.
are. And
Yep.
they're planning in a very different way.
Yep.
But
They're
that's
planning
interesting
to
that they're
fight the technical, the high tech battles of the future.
but they're putting people directly from military into like civilian planning
Yeah, yeah, they
because
had
they're
to. They had to
loyal.
repurpose them. They knew they could
Mm.
use their skill sets right off the go and do that. And then so that's
Oh,
one area.
interesting.
The other area, they took this like really high loyal group and they made them
Mm.
all judges. Never been a lawyer, never been to law school. They are their judges.
I mean, is there
Think who's making
such
those
thing as
judgment
court
decisions?
there though? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
is
yeah.
it
They've
is
got courts. They make it look
mm,
legit.
whew,
And when it comes down to the rulings, there's some behind the scenes direction, and
yeah.
there's even people like
There's a
interviews.
manual.
Yeah,
You're going to have to go down to subsection B. Yeah, Article
yeah,
7. This is what you have to do. This, yeah,
hmm
yeah.
yeah. And when he's interviewing some of these people that are,
Hmm.
I guess
Is this an
opened up.
American? I'm
Yeah, I think
curious.
it's an American that has interviewed and talked to tons. I don't know. He doesn't describe his methods, but the way he
Okay.
writes it, I'm getting that he went and talked to just a bunch of these people over many many years,
Mm.
and some were open about this. I doubt they'd be this open now. To compile this,
Sure.
that's why I was like, I don't know where they're getting all this, but this is like great because I've seen and heard some stuff living in and around that area,
Hmm.
and this just really pulls it all together as well as like high level economics and their direction
It's peeling back
Mhm.
the. I don't want to say touristy because you have spent time there, you've lived there, you've worked
Yep.
there, you've served the people there. So let me put that a different way. What I wanted to say is something like you've kind of peeled back the touristy. Oh, what's it like? I guess maybe it's more like you're looking at the layers of the civilization
Yep.
in a different
Yep.
lens because you've seen the layers, but then there's kind of as an American or an expat living there, I'm
Yep.
guessing you didn't see how the deeper layers actually functioned.
Right. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, even 3 years, there's probably not enough time to really get into that
Wow.
depth or level. So this book is really filling in a lot of gaps and giving me this whole new perspective on it. So anyway, I know we're going down a
That
different
sounds
rabbit hole
fascinating.
here, but I may recommend it. I'll pull up the book name here just if anybody's hearing this and is interested. It's called The Party:
I'm interested.
why we fight the party and the gun. That's the
Wow.
subtitle. So
Whew.
let me see if I can get an author pulled up here for you. Maybe not, maybe in a few. So anyway, yeah,
Man.
very cool.
Yeah. No,
Very,
that
but
sounds
I
great.
can't consume it all the time. So it's kind of sporadic, but it pulls me in, and I kind of have to be able to unplug from other things to listen. It's not a listen to
Yeah.
do while you're doing other stuff. It's like when you go for a run or a long drive, it's like, okay, I can get into this, but I reserve it for those
Yeah.
times.
That's
So
incredible. I forgot. There's one other book I'm nearly through. It's an audiobook
yeah,
this week. It's called The Longest Day, which is about the preparation from the Allied perspective that went into D-Day, and then a accounting of the
wow,
24 hours from kind of the French civilian perspective, French resistance,
hmm
underground perspective, obviously Allied, but it goes into kind of the participants from all these partner nations, ally nations,
wow,
and
yeah,
then obviously getting into some of the failed tactics on both sides in execution that led to D-Day as we know it.
wow,
Longest Day. It's excellent. It's really one of those. I'm not going to say it's anywhere near probably the depth of perspective that
hmm
the book you're reading goes through, but it
sure,
is
sure,
also. I thought of it because it's also one of those where you can't really be like doing the dishes. You can be
hmm
driving,
yep,
but you can't really have other things going on because I I foolishly one evening had it on and was laying in bed, and then I fell asleep, and I was like, "Oh crud! It's been going for like 4 hours."
oh
Um,
yeah, and you got it rewinding to find
it's
your
like,
spot after that.
oh, it's one of those books that's nearly impossible to get back to
Yeah,
because it just moves. It accounts for so many different perspectives,
wow,
and you're
that's
like,
cool.
anyway.
hmm
It's a great read. But I'm interested to hear more in future episodes about your conclusion on
Sure.
on your book, on the
I've
party.
been drawing some.
Very
So
cool.
very, very cool. Well, let's
Yeah.
take a short break here, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Now we're gonna
We are back.
going back even further a little bit. We're gonna dive into some fatherhood nostalgia stuff here. So, one thing that interests me about this topic when we started discussing it is just kind of the fun compare and contrast stuff, right? So,
For sure.
As well
We
as
are not our father's generation.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that's easy. So we're baby boomers to millennials, right? How did they parent us, and how are we parenting? What are we parenting Gen Z? I don't even know what they're calling it. Whichever. the children, they'll come up with some name at some point.
See, that's a millennial thing. My children don't have labels. I don't want them to be hampered by any labels. They are everything to everyone. Just kidding. Okay. Well, I hope when we talk about this, for everybody who's going to be listening for the remainder of the discussion,
Yep.
I hope if you're like, I'm really excited to hear about how bad, my own father was, or make comparisons between these generations, that because the past is, the past generation, the baby boomers were so bad. No, that's not going to happen.
They were so wrong. We know so much now.
Yeah.
They were just completely
Nope.
wrong. No. Yeah.
There's not a argument that's coming from this discussion. It's observational. We're looking back. If anything, there's lots of opportunities to laugh. I got to give you my first quick story, though. Okay.
Yep.
So I grew up in South Carolina, and it's a very it's very much a green place. Very beautiful. Lived in the upstate towards the mountains, and my parents were big about getting us involved in sports. And what that means, I think, to a baby boomer is you're playing 1 to 1.5 sports a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good contrast in our generation. I think my kids are going to play instruments. They're going to play soccer. It's like you can pick any season of the year and say, my kid's going to be involved. Yeah. I don't know how good that's going to be, because I know when I played 2 sports, baseball and football, as a kid, it was like, between that and my summer, that's my whole year.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm getting off track. Please.
Yeah, no, just some things here. I think, and I think a lot of parents in our generation, the millennial parents out there, I think this is where some burnout and some, just and the mom.
We are the burnout generation.
Mom burnout with I'm just a taxi driver. I take him to school. I take him to all these events. I go to the store, right? And not that like saying those are what they should be doing or anything like that. It's just, I think, the dad, there's probably some dads out there who are like getting this type of burnout because you're the one running them around for whatever reason. With your house scenario, right? I had to say you have 4 kids and they're all doing 3 sports, right? And then maybe they go to volleyball, then they go to softball, they're on the track team. You're pulled so many different directions. Yeah. It's that I think that extreme occurs because we want them to be more involved. But like you're saying, I didn't play baseball at school, but I played with the city league, and I played football at school, and I was in choir, I had some friends in band. So between those things, man, I was all over the place. And I mean, I think one of the difference is.
And look how you turned out.
I know, it's so horrible.
So well-rounded. A millennial gentleman, dare I say.
Extraordinary gentleman, I think.
Yes.
Very nice.
Quite.
Can hold a tune. But I don't know, like, tell me this. Like, I know we're not there with our kids yet, but if that was one of your children's scenario, are you gonna let them, like we used to, drive ourselves, go to all these places? Didn't even have cell phones really.
No.
And we just showed back up at home around dinner time. Is that gonna happen?
You're right,
now?
man. No, there's bookends, right? The bookends were maybe something like you're supposed to be at school, and back in the day, I don't even know if they do this now. Back in the day, like the attendance secretary or like your homeroom teacher would speak to your parents, or now it's probably like a text. It's probably an auto-generated text. That's crazy.
The camera did not.
It was an actual person who actually got like a handwritten note that was Justin was not in class today.
Yep.
So there's that, right? So you got this bookend of, I know my kid's in school for the boomers generation. And then at the end of the day, it was kind of like, and here's your curfew for a school night.
Yep.
And then you just showed up. But you're right. This whole idea of, touching base, texting throughout the day. I mean, think about it, man. Our kids are actually going to have GPS coordinated, like, posting. Like, there will be like data footprints.
Oh yeah.
Geospatial as well as kind of time and dated. That's crazy.
Yeah. So let me throw this out there.
Crazy to think.
Because it's along the same topics, and maybe nobody's a nerd like me and watched the Apple keynote, but I did. And not to highlight any of their products, that's not what we're here for. I am gonna
not a sponsor.
I'm gonna highlight one, not a sponsor.
Come on, Tim.
But I think it's cool for parents. So they just released iWatch SE. It's the first lower grade watch, and it also works with the 3. But the cool part is for parents is, up until this point, unless I think Verizon has some similar watch with some similar features, but if you had an iPhone, you may have tried that. I don't know. I think my sister may have one or I've heard my sister has one for my nephew. Don't even know about it. But the cool part, so Apple now, instead of, you're always like, well, I got to get them a phone. I need them to be able to call me when they're done with their sports or but you're giving them a phone and a whole bunch of responsibility with that phone. So now with the iWatch SE or the 3 or greater, if it has cellular capability, you can give them their own phone number, pair it to your phone. You can set reminders like when they get to school, when they leave school. You can control which contacts they have that they can call and receive calls from. You can control which apps they're using, right? All this kind of stuff and not to say that you need that much control, but there's a lot of stuff like that they can have access to if you don't control what's coming through their phone. There's a lot of inappropriate stuff that they could get exposed to at way too young of an age. I think this is a great step into that space for us millennial parents, where it'd be great to say, yeah, I want you to be able to walk to school on your own, but I want to know you got there safely, right? Those types of things. Yeah. So I think it opens up a bunch of doors, and I'm cool to see that's where they're headed.
That's really amazing. I want to contrast this with a story within a story. So everybody listening up there, I know I never got to the original story. I started going down the rabbit hole of extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to zoom back out to that one, I promise.
Okay.
But you're bringing up a great contrasting story. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm 5 years old. Older brother, neighborhood kids. I distinctly remember this is like maybe August. School's around the corner. My father is watching basketball, I believe. I think it was the NBA Finals. This is like Michael Jordan days, right?
Yeah.
So greatness is on the television. My mom is at like a girls' night. And so me and my older brother were jumping on the trampoline. I am the runt. I'm the little guy because I'm playing with my cool older brother's friends from the neighborhood. They all play basketball and everything. And there's no way they'll let me play basketball. But they finish their basketball. It's getting late in the evening. The sun's going down. And so everybody jumps on the trampoline. So we're all jumping around. And somebody, I'm the little kid. We're kind of playing like Pop the Popcorn. If you guys had a trampoline growing up, I think you know what that game is. So they're trying to pop me and stuff. And so I obviously am unsuccessful in staying in a cannonball popcorn kernel size. I get popped. And at some point when I came down, somebody stepped on my wrist, jumped on my wrist. There's way too many people on the trampoline, right?
Yeah.
And so I come inside kind of crying and holding my arm. And my dad hears me. One, he doesn't realize I've been outside the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? But is he concerned from that generation? No, not at all. It's like, okay, everybody's outside. They're yelling.
No. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's about the furthest thing from an Apple Watch as you could imagine, right?
Yep,
so I come in, I'm kind of crying, my arm's kind of swelling up. He gives me this look like, your mom, I know as a father what glazed over his eyes when he looked at me. Crud. He's supposed to get a bath. My wife's going to be home soon. Why is he still awake? So he was like, hurry and get a bath and go to bed. And I'm like, Dad, my arm hurts. And he's like, hurry and get a bath and go to bed. So I hurry and get a bath. He helps me get dressed for bed. I'm like, oh, my arms hurt. So I broke my arm. And I slept that night. And the look that my mom gave my dad the next morning was like, what did you do? And here's the thing. Was my mom mad at my dad? Sure.
Yeah.
Would she have done anything drastically different? Not in that setting. I mean, that generation is like, I grew up outside, flat out. And what I mean by that is I was not homeless. No disrespect to the homeless. But yeah, clearly.
Yes.
Homies, hobos. But we played outside. I mean, that was our childhood, right?
Yep.
And there's plenty of good times inside, but I don't think my mom would have done anything different. I felt differently when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, my dad, he was so hard on us, and he let me get hurt, and then he just sent me to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, one, I probably would have done exactly the same thing to a degree, right?
Yeah.
My kid comes in crying. I'm like, rub some dirt in it. I get that from my dad. I get that from previous generation.
For sure.
Although, if my son or my daughter would have had their Apple Watch on, I could check their health. Maybe I'd see that their pulse was high and that there's a problem.
Let's run an EKG real quick. Let's see how your heart's doing.
Yeah. Let me run a quick diagnostic. So I get a cast on my arm, and long story short, like I said, is that, my dad wasn't uninvolved, but there was just a level of like trust in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah.
Trust in my brother. Autonomy. Yep. Autonomy is a great word.
Yep.
That I don't think people put their phones down quite enough to get maybe to that same level of kind of neighborhood. But also there was just less complexity to the situation.
Yeah.
My dad had a full-blown distraction. I mean, trust me, he's a huge sports fan. He was watching Michael Jordan, the legend. Yep. At least it was Michael Jordan, not like Vlade Divac. It's like, he was watching the best. But that when I was a kid, I blamed my dad for that situation. Now that I'm a father, I'm like, phew, that could be me in like 2 seconds. But I think if my mom was home, the only difference is I would have probably got some medical attention sooner. But come on. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't ruined. I was okay. So did you have any kind of like, is there any relatability there? Not because you broke bones on your dad's watch, but just like rub some dirt in it. I know your parents sort of well, but I don't know them from your childhood. I know them as an adult.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, maybe not so young, but I mean, there'd be times, high school even, I'd come back from, I just cruised on my dirt bike, went up in the mountains, hit some jumps, things like that. And sure, I had my helmet on, but I may come back all scraped up, covered in dirt, maybe a little bit of blood here and there from some tree branches, whatever. And I'd walk in the door and my mom's like, go take a shower. If anything's broken, let me know. But go, it was kind of you're not
Let
dying.
Me guess.
Okay.
You had better not leave those boots again. I don't know, fill in the blank, in the laundry room or in the kitchen. That was probably
them across the carpet. It was really, leave that in the garage. And
there you go.
That type of thing.
Go get a shower.
But to like, again, totally compare, and I think this brings up maybe, now I'm thinking through this, for me, a big fear as a parent, and just something that is maybe it was as bad back then, but I
Yeah.
have to say maybe not, is there's a whole bunch of stuff with, kidnapping children and the whole, I mean, there's a whole really
Interesting.
gross like sex slavery thing
Yeah.
with children, and even now with the COVID and everything, there's been people posting in like our neighborhood groups, like, hey, there was this van following my daughter, and it's like they're coming out in daylight because nobody's out in these public places where they can get them, and like we're
Jeez.
one of the safe, top
Yeah.
cities of the
It's a
nation.
nice island.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's like that's a big fear. But to contrast that with a story of my own, I remember a good friend, Scott DeBella, me and him in high school, or maybe it was late junior high. Anyway, freshman-ish years, we got on our bikes, and I think we rode across like the whole city to go to other friends'
Miles.
houses. Miles on the
Yes.
bike.
I
Like,
totally did that as a kid too. Isn't that
completely
epic?
gone.
That's like the best feeling.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was freeing. Like, we were like, we have bikes. We can't drive.
You were
we
like
have
half
bikes.
ran away. That was not your intention.
Oh yeah.
But you were like gone.
Yeah, and he was awesome on the bike, and I was just getting on it, and I was like, at the end of those days, I was like dead physically, but it was so much fun, and we went so many places, and I just can't imagine that these days. Like, at those ages, just cruising around by yourself, like, where are your parents? Like it's just so
Somebody
different.
would literally call the police on you if you were that child.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, and I'm not going to say you and I grew up in straight up like Andy Griffith, Mayberry.
Right.
We grew up in the 80s, 90s. We're millennials, right? Was it a safer nation? I think there's all kinds of statistics. I don't want this to be a data-driven, thing, because I don't know. I don't have that data.
It just
you're
feels
right.
different.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for me, I don't know if for you, is that's a big fear, like losing your kid to something like that. Like,
well,
I feel for like anybody who's had those experiences, like, but that just it's there. It's like, I'm not gonna let that happen. I'd rather be the annoying hovering parent than to have that
helicopter.
Yeah, I'm the helicopter parent because I don't want that to happen.
So I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I don't think there's a wrong aspect to this, but observationally, because there's often times where my wife throws out a situation, and I don't shrug it off and say, rub some dirt in it type thing, but I try and understand it from a different perspective. I'm kind of devil's advocate sometimes, just to try and better understand a counterpoint. But I feel like in that very, on that very subject of kind of being that devil's advocate, that at times our information age is also instills produces a culture of fear.
Yeah.
And I think that I can't remember who coined this. I think there's somebody else. I don't think this is I don't even know if I want to say this word because we might get kicked off of YouTube. So anyway, there's just a culture of kind of fear mongering, where that is like almost a natural floor that we all have a threshold of fear, because there's so much information where it's like, hey, did you know all these facts about COVID? You need to be losing your mind right now. Or, and I don't mean to be overly political with that, but pick any kind of subject that, like you're saying, you're relating to, sex trafficking, human trafficking, kidnapping, abuse of minors, just terrible, terrible things that do happen. I kind of say they've always been happening. Maybe there's more visibility, maybe there's more data, maybe it is more prevalent. But I can tell you that having more of the information available in our data age kind of makes us more susceptible to the fears that come from that understandings. I'm again, everybody, I'm not commenting on which way is better. If it was better in our parents' generation, this is not a discussion of who had it easier. Again, not going with those arguments. But that's interesting. I can totally relate, though. There was a threshold. Did you have this? there was like a place on a map that I could probably point to as a kid and say, that's the furthest I've ever gone on my own,
Oh yeah.
on foot, on a bike.
For
And
sure.
when I was probably, between 9 and 12, I was pushing that boundary all the time, going further, to the point where I can totally relate with your story about your buddy Scott, where me and my buddies would go so far out into the woods. We're like, we're like halfway to school, like to our elementary school, which was not close. We better turn, like we knew where we were, but we were totally comfortable like getting lost and kind of the exploratory aspect of it. And we were in South Carolina, middle of nowhere in the woods. That kind of helped, it's not like we were in a super urban area. But it was like an all day thing. And it was something that I had with my friends where it was like, dude, we took like a journey, man. Like we had an adventure.
Yep.
And my parents are just like, oh, you got home really late. Are you hungry? There's food in the fridge. Like, oh,
yeah. Okay, so let me throw this out there.
Yes.
How many of these did you do as a kid? How many play dates?
Too many to count, man.
No. Okay, I'm
sorry.
Slightly changing the subject. How many play dates did you get scheduled with your parents to go to?
What's a play date? I think we went to like birthday parties.
Right. I mean, that's another. Just comparing and contrasting some of this. That's like the only way our kids play now, right? I don't know.
Scheduled.
It's like scheduled, and it may not be a full-on play day, but it's like, hey, we're gonna go to the park and let them meet new people. Or
it's like you said, man. I think the word is autonomy. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
It's the autonomy of the neighborhood and the community. And I don't mean community like city. I literally mean like the quarter mile in every direction or half mile in every direction, and who and trust among your kids. And you know what it is? I live in a very safe community as well. I'm sure statistically it's right up there.
Yep.
But there's kind of, as a parent, there's kind of this, you look at another parent and think, I wonder what their kind of boundaries are with kids playing and what they're comfortable with. And so, for example, my kids aren't of the age that they want to go in people's houses. They want to play outside. Outside is their thing right now, right? Sure. But there will come a time where it's like, we want to go to Sally's house because she has the new video game or she has new music. Like, that's going to happen, right? They're going to get a little bit older and they're going to want to do those things. And I can already see that there's going to be parents who are going to be like, I'm sure this crosses a line. You can never, ever go in their house. And it's like, there's nothing in my house that's of any interest at all. I mean, I live here. Trust me. I'm in here all the time. So anyway, I feel like in our day and age, you talk about play dates and scheduling. I also think gets like that autonomy is going to be really, really, really hard to get to, because as parents, I think we look at other parents and go, we all grew up maybe completely different, but we all were in that same age era, right?
Yeah.
I just wonder if everybody wants that again. I want that. I love that. I love for my kids to grow up more the way that I did, but I know it's not maybe feasible.
Yeah. Well, and I want to throw this out there too. It's along the same lines, maybe a slight twist on this topic. But my wife, in reading up on, school and homeschool and everybody having these various situations of my school's not open, they went to online.
Yeah, right.
Or I need to teach them myself at home.
Learning from home.
Curriculum, right? Homeschool, and that's becoming much more open. People are more open to it. It's becoming more popular with the current, situation. And the interesting thing is, the biggest thing we came across while researching this was, but they need to be socialized with these other children, right? They need to go to school for that. And an interesting point was brought up that we came across was, what are they going to learn from those other children besides to be other children, like to be more childlike, right? You wouldn't send, in corporate world, you're not going to send, your team out to meet with another team and just get other team experience. You're going to send them to like leadership training from leaders and things like that. So it makes sense. But so the thing we came across was, actually kids that stay home and interact with adults all day long become very socialized. Like they know how to interact with other people and people older than them.
Interesting.
Like
Yeah.
it actually isn't as much of a need, although we kind of draw to that. But and again, I'm not trying to back that up a date or anything, but we felt that felt comfortable for us, and we were like, okay, good. As long as they, you know, get some time with friends, more for play. They need to
Yeah.
play with peers.
Yeah.
But if you're like, oh, they need to be socialized and learn how to socially interact, it's like, well, you know, Bobby down the street socializing with him at school or her at school is he's going to interact with
Bobby
them
down
like,
the street makes mud pies.
yeah,
You know?
it's like, what social skills is he like writing a book on social skills? Like, is that why you want him to meet with Bobby? Like,
how to eat your boogers. There's no
exactly,
Bobby
like
down the
that's what
street.
they're
I just
gonna
want to
get. It's
say
just
full
gonna get
disclaimer.
they get reinforced by a, you know, a classroom of 40 people doing the same thing. They're gonna be like, oh great, he does that, I can do it too. Versus at home, you'll get the
Gotcha.
daily correction and hey, that's not socially acceptable. This is socially acceptable, and they'll catch more than they're taught. Right? They're gonna by example. They're gonna catch a ton from us socially. So there is a positive side to kind of what's going on right now.
There is. Everybody take that in stride. One, because you got to, right? What are your alternatives? But I think that's a solid perspective. There's good wisdom in that. You know, surround your children with people who have character, people who can help them socialize, and there will always be playtime. I agree. I feel like our generation has always had this, but kids have to play. They have to play.
No,
They have to
play's
play.
huge.
If
Yep.
they don't play, schedule playtime. Make it happen.
Wow,
I
they
like
learn
it.
so much through play.
Yeah.
Just to our audience out there, if you've got some nostalgic or good comparisons, good stories like you've heard us share, uh, leave them in the comments below. We'd love to hear,
Yes.
you know, your guys' point of view. Uh, yeah, leave us some comments.
I
We'll
have
check them
so
out.
many that are not applicable to our discussion today. So many.
No worries.
Hey, I do want to end with a mentor minute. I think
Awesome.
what you just shared about your own kids reflects in teams as well. I mean, really, you talked about a corporate environment, but I just want to say this. What's been on my mind this week and based on our topic today is investing time in your own team. In other words,
yes,
invest time in people. I have a schedule where as long as I have my phone on me, I have the potential to work, and typically I am working. So that's not to say that. What I mean is every time I'm on my phone, I'm typically working, and I am kind of on call in the work that I do.
Yep.
But it's all the more challenging for me to kind of put my phone down and just be present with my own team and with the people on my team. And trust me, we're not like, you know, sipping tea and talking about each other's kids. I wouldn't say that I have that relationship with everybody on my team.
Yep.
But I think our generation has a real struggle with trying to, you know, to to stop pursuing like the perfect fill in the blank, the perfect meeting, the perfect presentation, you know, the perfect process, the perfect product or service that you or your team provides. I look at it this way. I mean, there's just no such thing. Are the pursuit of those perfect meetings and presentations important? Not as important as the people on your team.
Yep.
And the reason why I say that, Chaz, is because I have been on the teams, and in different stages of my career, I have led teams that have been broken. And I have been a bad leader. And those usually go hand in hand. I won't say they're mutually exclusive, but I'll just let everybody know. Just think about the value proposition this way. Would you rather have a perfect presentation or a perfect product to put out there with a broken team or bad leadership to try and execute, sell it, work with your customers?
Yep.
I think everyone would say, no, I'd rather have an imperfect product or service, but have a solid team with good leadership. So that analogy will always be true in your career, no matter whether you're in leadership or not. So look to your peers and look to those who you have stewardship over or that you lead, and invest in them. There's a million ways to do this, everybody. I'm not going to, say that there's a best way to do it.
Sure.
It's just time. It's just saying, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to let my inbox pile up. I'm going to let this imperfect process stay imperfect a little bit longer. And I'm going to go get some FaceTime. Not the Apple product, not sponsored, but the actual FaceTime, like when we were kids, as it were. Face-to-face time, interpersonal communications, and spend time with your team. I found that, you can still meet deadlines, but you can't always take opportunities to get to know people and build up trust if all you're ever doing is refining your tasks and making that perfect fill in the blank. That was a bunch of ranting. I want to get your take. I want to get whether you agree, whether you disagree.
So to me, this is what I'm hearing is you're kind of, money or time is money. And you're kind of, in my mind, it flipped that backward to say, well, money is time, right? You are spending your currency of time by investing it in that person, right? If we looked at each person as like a walking piggy bank, family, work-related, whatever, your children, how much of that currency have you invested in them? Like, how full are those piggy banks? How full are those accounts? And that is more important than the flip of that, which is, time is money, right? To you, time is money was I can be on my phone working and making money. I'm trading my time for my money, or I can flip that and invest that in, in my kids, in this event, be present, whichever scenario. And in the long run, investing in people is going to pay off every time. I completely 110%. Agree on that. 100%.
You should have shared it.
No, I didn't.
Way more concise.
Oh no, I didn't know that until you just said that.
By long, terrible preview by Justin.
It was great. It was great.
Nope, that's solid. That's why this is a great exchange, because of those ideas and your perspective and wording it a different way. I hope that reaches everybody. Chas said it so well. That actually enhances my understanding of my own thought.
Awesome.
Hey,
but
that's
again,
the perfect example, though.
Yeah.
It's the perfect example of connecting with people. They will bring your life richness and genuine wealth as well in your career. I can tell you right now.
For sure.
If you don't believe me, just look at the power of networking. What does that have to do with the presentation, with the next meeting that you have, with what product or service your past companies you worked for have, how cool they were, how great they were, how much of a market share, or how much of an even a margin that they had. Invest in people. I'm cutting you off though, please.
No, that's all good. I was just going to say, audience, we are unable to, unfortunately, be face-to-face with you, technical difficulties. Thanks for listening. Hope you liked it.
Everybody, thank you for spending the time with us today. We hope you liked today's podcast. Make sure you like and you hit subscribe as well. Share it with your friends. Share the hope. Rise up with us. We'll see you soon.